Ukraine's drones crushed Russian Iskanders in 30 mins. Putin is now seeking for peace.
Bryansk remained locked in winter night when Russian detection systems picked up the initial irregularity. Slow-moving objects, extraordinarily low elevation. Detection signatures barely distinguishable from ambient interference. Moments later, operators verified 14 to 16 aerial contacts, traveling beneath 40 to 50 meters, following ground contours at velocities under 110 kilometers per hour. Within the Iskander servicing area, the moment couldn't have been more critical. 3 platforms, each exceeding 44 tons in weight, were down for standard maintenance. Propellant connections were attached. Solid fuel engines lay uncovered less than 30 meters distant. Adjacent to them, 5 transport vehicles held warheads, massing approximately 480 to 500 kilograms apiece. The location was deemed protected because it lay beyond 90 kilometers from Ukrainian territory. A single drone separated from the group and dove toward a collection of support equipment positioned near Storage Building 2. The detonation produced a concentrated yet intense fireball. Heat detectors subsequently measured a surge surpassing 1,900 degrees Celsius, while blast pressure exceeded structural limits within a 180 to 210 meter range. The detonation didn't level the installation, but it paralyzed it. 2 transport vehicles were made inoperative. Hydraulic force plummeted from 5,600 psi to nothing almost immediately. 1 Iskander platform was thrown out of position. Its firing mechanism twisted beyond on-site restoration. For 9 seconds, electricity fluctuated throughout the complex. Monitoring systems froze. Emergency power engaged slowly. By the time vision was restored, warnings were already sounding across Bryansk. To Russian leadership, this appeared controllable. A contained assault, a probing attack. Pantsir-S-1 units were brought online within 45 seconds, transitioning to complete combat readiness. Detection sensitivity was heightened. Interceptor teams were briefed to anticipate additional drones. What they missed was the design. The assault didn't focus on missiles in reserve. It struck during refueling, during servicing, during the precise 12-minute interval when operational margins were at their narrowest. Ukraine hadn't targeted annihilation. It had targeted interference. As Bryansk rushed to secure 1 compromised launcher and 2 disabled vehicles, the broader scenario remained hidden. This wasn't the primary assault, it was a ranging strike. And while Russian countermeasures concentrated on Bryansk, the actual sequence had already commenced, hundreds of kilometers away. If this was merely the initial action, where do you believe the genuine strike was directed next? As Bryansk fought to restore compromised systems, the atmosphere above Kursk and Belgorod illuminated with something far more concerning. Detection operators witnessed initially a sudden expansion of contacts spreading across numerous sectors, not dozens. Over 70 signatures appearing low and gradual, distributed at elevations between 35 and 60 meters approaching from various directions. Russian teams didn't pause. Pantsir-S-1 units activated instantly. S-400 platforms elevated. Within moments, interceptors were launching into the darkness. Each projectile carried a cost hovering around $140,000 to $160,000. And in fewer than 6 minutes, more than 80% of those interceptors were exhausted, consumed on contacts that barely cost $700 each. Because these weren't assault drones, they were lures. Corvo decoys saturated the airspace, transmitting signatures calibrated to appear heavier, faster, and far more threatening than they actually were. Russian detection systems engaged. Weapon guidance committed. The defensive canopy sealed completely, precisely as intended. And while focus remained fixed on the atmosphere, the actual movement occurred beneath it. Between the detection cycles and projectile launches, 16 to 18 attack drones penetrated through at under 45 meters. utilizing landscape shielding and visual obstruction. Their objective wasn't the platforms yet. It was the support structure surrounding them, fuel distribution stations, backup power connections. One drone impacted a secondary reserve location, initiating a confined explosion that drove internal heat beyond 2,100 degrees Celsius and eliminated the resupply sequence for 3 Iskander systems. To Russian commanders, this seemed like victory. Numerous contacts destroyed, the wave repelled. Intelligence transmitted upward, declaring authority had been re-established. By compelling Russia to deplete interceptors and overtune detection sensitivity, Ukraine wasn't assaulting capability, it was eroding it. Response time decreased, equipment overheated. Operators remained trapped in the identical cognitive pattern. And as Kursk and Belgorod announced the danger neutralized, a far larger detection anomaly was already developing to the south. Because what was approaching next wouldn't challenge the countermeasures. It would saturate them. If you were positioned behind that detection screen, would you hesitate or would you launch? Rostov was expected to be prepared. By the time alerts spread north and west, regional commanders had already elevated aerial countermeasures to maximum awareness. Detection amplification was increased high. Response protocols were relaxed. Every display radiated with certainty that this occasion nothing would penetrate through. In fewer than 40 seconds, 72 aerial objects entered the Rostov sector from 3 trajectories. Elevations ranged between 30 and 70 meters. Velocities were irregular. Signatures merged to the detection system. It didn't appear like an assault. It appeared like interference, excessive amounts of it. Panzer S-1 systems can monitor roughly 24 contacts simultaneously. Rostov received 3 times that quantity. Weapon guidance processors began rotating priorities, continuously abandoning one track to pursue another. Operators fired interceptors regardless. In under 4 minutes, more than $18 million worth of protective projectiles were discharged into vacant atmosphere. While decoys attracted detection and weapons upward, 26 attack drones approached low and rapid from the east, utilizing the cover of industrial facilities and railway areas. Their objective was not the platforms themselves, but the core of the supply hub, fuel reserves, and transloader positioning. The initial detonation struck a pressurized fuel container holding nearly 190,000 liters of solid propellant materials. The second arrived 7 seconds afterward. The explosion didn't culminate once, it multiplied. Internal heat surged past 3,100 degrees Celsius, triggering a sequence reaction that expanded across the installation. Instruments measured continuous explosions for 34 straight minutes. Storage doors tore away. Pressure waves shattered reinforced barriers. Inside, 4 Iskander-M platforms were rendered inoperative. 6 transloader vehicles, each critical for missile resupply, were eliminated where they positioned. Hydraulic mechanisms vaporized. Recovery schedules extended from weeks into months. By 4:02 a.m., Rostov had ceased broadcasting coherent situation updates. Electricity was sporadic. Transmissions dropped intermittently. The supply channel feeding the Donbass operation was no longer operational. This was not a surgical strike focused on symbolism. It was a structural collapse induced in real time. Rostov didn't collapse because countermeasures were insufficient. It collapsed because they were saturated at the incorrect moment. As vapor ascended thousands of meters into the atmosphere and thermal patterns illuminated satellites across the territory, one reality became inescapable. The mission had crossed a boundary and the subsequent objectives were already monitoring. As the flames in Rostov were still raging, command focus shifted south to Krasnodar. This was intended to be different. Unlike the northern centers, Krasnodar sat beneath one of the most concentrated electronic countermeasure networks in the territory. Operators believed this was where the boundary would finally persist. Krasuka 4. Electronic warfare platforms surged to extreme capacity, saturating the spectrum with broadband disruption. Signal concentration spiked by nearly 60% in under a minute. GPS reception deteriorated across a 45-kilometer radius. To Russian teams, it felt like sealing the battlefield inside an invisible barrier. The strength of the interference began to asphyxiate Krasnodar's own instruments. S-400 detection systems struggled to distinguish actual returns from their own reflected interference. Track reliability dropped drastically. Weapon guidance systems paused. The fortress wasn't quiet. It was broadcasting too intensely to detect anything else. Into that interference came 31 low-profile drones, constructed from composite materials with minimal metallic content. Their detection signatures fell below 0.01 square meters. Instead of resisting the interference, they utilized it. Passive navigation systems homed in on the Krasuka's transmissions, using the strongest disruption as a guide rather than an impediment. At 4:04 a.m., the initial drone penetrated the boundary undetected. Within seconds, detonations followed across the deployment zone. 3 Iskander-M platforms were struck while stationed. Nose to tail, engines dormant, cooling mechanisms uncovered. Heat instruments measured localized surges exceeding 2,800 degrees Celsius. Hydraulic containers ignited. Command electronics failed simultaneously. Adjacent missile management vehicles burned through their structural supports, disabling 5 transloaders in fewer than a minute. Transmissions collapsed almost instantly. Fiber connections overheated. Emergency radios drowned in disruption. For 11 full minutes, Krasnodar went silent on the regional command display. What had been engineered as an electronic barrier became an electronic obstruction. As vapor settled over the installation and response teams struggled to regain fundamental authority, the consequences were unavoidable. The most robust protective junction in the infrastructure had neutralized itself. And with Krasnodar offline, only one major position remained intact. Crimea was next. By the time Krasnodar fell silent, Crimea stood isolated. For years, Russian strategists had characterized the peninsula as impenetrable, a stratified fortress protected by intersecting S-400 and Tor-M 2 units, reinforced by maritime detection and constant surveillance. Assurance rested on concentration, protection on duplication. Nothing was expected to penetrate through. The approach didn't arrive from the atmosphere they anticipated. A single F-16 Block 50 entered low along the shoreline, concealed by landscape and maritime clutter, maintaining elevation below 45 meters in velocity near 1,400 kilometers per hour. It was not present to attack. It was present to create openings. At 4:12 a.m., electronic equipment came active, saturating multiple frequencies with concentrated disruption. Seconds afterward, 2 AGM-88 HARM projectiles separated and accelerated ahead, targeting on active detection transmissions. Russian teams faced a binary decision: stay operational and risk engagement, or power down and lose awareness. Within moments, several emitters went inactive. The protective picture fragmented. That fragmentation was the indicator. 10 Corvo decoys entered initially, attracting fire and focus inland. Automatic weapons engaged at maximum rate. Short-range interceptors pursued false returns. While countermeasures focused forward, 6 Neptune cruise projectiles skimmed the Black Sea at under 4 meters above the surface. Concealed in spray and horizon, their approach trajectories converged on Storage Building 12, the primary deployment location for the Crimean missile formation. At 4:15 a.m., the initial detonations landed. 2 projectiles struck the entrances at high velocity. 4 more followed through the upper structure. Inside the building, 6 Iskander-M platforms sat completely loaded, warheads positioned, fuel connections attached. The resulting reaction was immediate and devastating. Heat measurements peaked above 3,200 degrees Celsius. Pressure waves tore through reinforced concrete. Secondary detonations expanded across the facility for nearly 10 minutes. By the time the combustion subsided, 5 transloader vehicles were eliminated and the Crimean missile formation ceased to operate as an organized capability. Satellite instruments tracked a thermal column rising over 800 meters, observable far beyond the peninsula. The fortress had not been assaulted. It had been unlocked from within. By the time dawn approached, the chart no longer resembled a protection infrastructure. Bryansk, Kursk, Rostov, Krasnodar, and Crimea were all reporting partial or complete loss of missile capability. What connected them was not location, but synchronization. The complete sequence from initial contact to final detonation had unfolded in just over 30 minutes. The statistics were merciless. Across 5 territories, 11 to 13 Iskander-M platforms were rendered inoperative. 17 transloader vehicles were eliminated or compromised beyond field restoration. Multiple fueling stations and servicing areas were disabled simultaneously. Recovery schedules were no longer calculated in days or weeks, but in months. Some elements would require production-level reconstruction. Financial evaluations began circulating almost instantly. Conservative projections placed equipment damages between $2.6 and $3.1 billion. The protecting force had consumed hundreds of high-value interceptors and thousands of rounds of automatic weapon ammunition. In contrast, the attacking capability relied primarily on economical airframes, lures, and a restricted number of precision munitions, an imbalance that transformed the exchange calculation beyond anything strategists had predicted. More damaging than the physical loss was the operational interruption. Missile formations that had been prepared for sustained operations were forced offline. Command and coordination nodes struggled to re-establish clean communication links. For several hours, long-range strikeability across the southern and western sectors was sharply diminished. This was not accomplished by overwhelming capability. It was accomplished by sequencing. Each strike targeted a different component of the system: maintenance, refueling, supply, electronic countermeasure. Command, never the identical vulnerability twice consecutively. Protective responses arrived, but always one step behind the problem they were addressing. By 5 a.m., response teams were still evaluating damage, while senior commanders attempted to reconstruct how so many hardened locations had failed in parallel. The answer was already apparent in the chronologies. The mission did not rely on surprise alone. It relied on predictability of procedures, of reactions, of assumptions that had gone unchallenged for years. In half an hour, a strategic equilibrium shifted. Not because everything was annihilated, but because everything that mattered was interrupted at the same time. When the vapor cleared, the most significant damage wasn't what burned on the ground. It was what stopped moving in the infrastructure. In just 30 minutes, a system constructed over years lost its cadence. Platforms stood dormant. Supply froze. Command schedules fragmented, not because of one massive assault, but because dozens of small, precise actions landed at precisely the incorrect moments. This mission didn't rewrite the principles of warfare. It revealed them. It demonstrated that modern conflict isn't determined by who possesses the largest weapons, but by who comprehends timing, indicators, and vulnerability better. Steel was not defeated by more steel. It was surpassed by synchronization. So here's the question worth considering. If economical systems can dismantle billion-dollar arsenals this rapidly, what does deterrence even resemble tomorrow? And if this can occur in 30 minutes, how many assumptions are still standing simply because they haven't been challenged yet? Let me know your perspectives in the comments. And if you want more comprehensive breakdowns like this, stay with the channel.